Wait a second, imagined. People tried to ban coffee. They handed out punishments. They tore down coffeehouses. Rulers, religious leaders, emperors, all of them failed. Because right now, you're holding that cup in your hand. And this story began with a few goats. About 1,000 years ago, there was a shepherd in the mountains of Ethiopia. His name was Kaldi. He woke up early that morning and took his goats out to graze. Just an ordinary day. The sun was rising, the animals were feeding, everything seemed normal. He would probably wander the same hills, pass through the same bushes, take the same road home, and nothing would change. But as the day went on, something caught his attention. The goats were acting differently. Normally, they should have been getting tired toward evening. They should have been slowing down. But no, that wasn't happening. They were running, jumping, climbing over one another, as if someone had filled them with an invisible energy. At first, Kaldi rubbed his eyes. Then he looked again. No, he was seeing it correctly. The first day, he didn't think much of it. These things happen, he told himself. The second day, the same thing. The third day, the same thing. By now, his curiosity had become impossible to ignore. He followed the goats. The animals made their way to some bushes on the mountainside. There were red berries there, small, bright red berries. The goats eagerly ate them, and after they did, that's when they really came alive. Kaldi sat there for a while, watching. Then he asked himself that question. What if I tried one too? Now stop for a second. What would you have done? Think about it. A fruit you've never seen before, one you know nothing about. You see a goat eating it. You would have tried it too, right? Most of us would have, and that's exactly what Kaldi did. He ate it. And just like that, one of the most important what-if moments in history took place. A shepherd, a mountainside, and a handful of red berries. Now, let's pause here for a moment. Historians aren't even sure whether Kaldi really existed. Maybe this story is completely true. Maybe it's a legend. Or perhaps it's a tale that has grown and been embellished over the centuries. But this much we know. Coffee really did originate in Ethiopia. And for a very long time, the rest of the world knew nothing about it. Back then, coffee was just a wild plant. Nobody knew about it. Nobody cared about it. Those red berries were growing there quietly in those mountains until someone carried them across the sea. Coffee crossed the Red Sea and arrived in Yemen. Today, most of us know Yemen only from the news. But centuries ago, Yemen was one of the most important trading centers in the world. Spices passed through here. Silk passed through here. Gold passed through here. The world's most valuable goods were changing hands in those ports. And over time, coffee joined that list as well. As people began drinking coffee, they noticed something interesting. This drink was different. It didn't make you drowsy. Quite the opposite. It woke you up. It kept you going longer. It helped you stay focused longer. It pushed your fatigue aside. Sufi orders began using it during long nights of worship. Why? Because they needed to stay awake for hours. You would pray until dawn. You would worship until dawn. But your eyes begin to close, and that's exactly when coffee stepped in. But the real game changer happened in trade, the port of Mocha. Today, when we hear Mocha, we think of chocolate-flavored coffee. But that name actually comes from that port in Yemen, the gateway of coffee to the world. Not a single bean passed through anywhere else. Yemeni merchants had realized something very important. They held a monopoly. Today, not sharing your Netflix password feels like a monopoly, doesn't it? But Yemen truly controlled the world's entire coffee supply on its own. Everyone wanted this drink, and everyone could only buy it from them. So how did they protect that monopoly? With a very clever strategy. Whenever coffee beans were shipped out, They were either boiled or roasted first. Why? Because a living coffee bean could be taken somewhere else and planted. But a boiled or roasted bean won't grow. It won't sprout. No matter what you do, it won't become a plant. For years, the plan worked. The world bought coffee, Yemen profited, until that man appeared. Do you know his name? Baba Budan, an Indian pilgrim. When he arrived in Yemen, he saw the power of coffee. He drank it, he felt it, and he understood. This wasn't just a drink, it was power. But he also saw Yemen's strict controls. The ports were heavily monitored. Every bean was inspected. No living seed was allowed to leave. But Baba Budan thought differently. What if I could smuggle out just a few? Now think about it. 7 seeds. Just 7 tiny seeds. How many small objects do you have in your pocket or bag right now? Could any one of them change the world? Baba Budan's did. According to the story, he hid 7 living coffee beans on his person. Why exactly 7? Because 7 was considered a sacred number. And in those days, someone carrying a religiously significant number was rarely questioned. Clever. Very clever. As he passed through the strict customs inspections, his face revealed nothing. Step by step, he moved forward. The officials checked his belongings. He remained calm. No one knows what he was feeling inside. Maybe his heart was pounding. Maybe his hands were shaking. But he gave nothing away. He boarded the ship. The sea opened before him. The shoreline faded into the distance. And that night, Baba Budan stood on the deck, staring into the dark water. In his possession was the future of coffee. Just 7 tiny seeds. When he reached the hills of Mysore in India, he planted those 7 beans in the soil. Those 7 seeds grew. They became trees. Those trees multiplied, spread, and became forests. And Yemen's supposedly unbreakable monopoly was quietly broken by a single man making a single decision. What fascinates me most about this story is this. Baba Budan was neither a ruler, nor a general, nor a wealthy merchant. He was an ordinary man. But what he did changed the world. Sometimes the people who change history are exactly like that. People with no army, no palace, just the courage to act at the right moment. Before coffee made its way into Europe, I need to ask you something. What do you think Europeans drank in the morning before coffee arrived? Water? No, it wasn't that simple. In most of Europe at the time, finding clean drinking water was nearly impossible. The rivers were polluted, the wells were polluted. As cities grew larger, the water sources became even more contaminated. The water you drank could make you sick, seriously sick. Cholera, dysentery, typhoid. So what did people drink instead? Beer, wine, lightly fermented beverages. At breakfast, at lunch, at dinner. Even children did. Young children. Children drinking light beer before going to school. Why? Because the fermentation process made the water safe. The bacteria were killed. It was safe to drink. It didn't make people sick. Now think about that for a moment. While you're drinking your coffee in the morning today, someone in your place back then was heading to work after drinking a light beer every day for their entire life, and they thought it was completely normal because there was no alternative. An entire continent spent centuries starting each morning with a slight buzz. And then coffee arrived. For the first time, people felt truly awake. Their minds were clear, their thoughts were sharp. They had energy, but they weren't sluggish. They could think clearly in the morning hours. It was a completely new feeling for them. Some historians argue this. The Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, the great discoveries, Newton, Voltaire, the peak of the Renaissance. All of these are directly connected to coffee. Because until that point, Europeans had never really thought this clearly in the mornings. Maybe what changed Europe wasn't just a great idea. Maybe what made those ideas possible was that black liquid people drank every morning. As coffee spread to new lands, the real transformation happened in the cities. When people tasted coffee, they didn't want to drink it alone. They wanted to drink it together. They wanted to share it. They wanted to talk, and that's how coffee houses were born. But these coffee houses were nothing like what you're imagining today. They weren't places where people sat in the corner with a laptop and headphones on. They were much louder, much more crowded, much more alive. Back then, there was no internet, no phones, no television. Even newspapers were extremely limited. If something important happened in a city, how would you find out? At the coffee house. A merchant returning from distant lands would arrive and tell stories of what he had seen. A poet would read his latest verses. Philosophers would debate for hours. Merchants would make deals. Politicians would make plans. Scientists would share ideas. The coffee house was like the brain of the city, the center of news, ideas, and plans. And that is exactly why it made some rulers uncomfortable. Istanbul, the heart of the Ottoman Empire, one of the most powerful cities in the world. And Sultan Murad IV looked at these coffee houses and saw something that drove him mad. People were gathering together, talking, debating, criticizing the government, making plans. They were speaking freely over coffee. No one could stop them. To him, they were potential rebels. These coffee houses were breeding grounds for danger. So he made a decision. Coffee houses would be shut down. Now think about it. What would you do if meeting up with your friends through a WhatsApp group was suddenly forbidden today? You would probably still meet, maybe somewhere else, maybe more secretly. And that's exactly what people did. They gathered in hidden corners. They drank coffee in private homes. They met in back alleys. The ban didn't stop them. It only made them more careful. It is said that Murad IV eventually took matters into his own hands. Every night he would wear a different disguise. He would leave through a back gate of the palace, accompanied by only a few trusted men. He would quietly walk through the narrow streets of Istanbul, watching every corner, listening carefully to what people were saying. And those he caught with coffee in their hands faced severe punishments, in the middle of the night, without warning, all because of a drink. But here's the important thing. The issue was never really the coffee itself. The issue was the people gathering around that coffee. It was the conversations they were having. It was about sharing ideas, about influencing one another. Murad IV understood that very well. That's why he was so afraid. And despite all his efforts, he failed. Because once an idea begins to spread, no ban can stop it. Coffee crossed into Europe, and similar debates followed there as well. But in London, something interesting happened. Coffee houses became known as penny universities. Why? Because you paid a penny, just a single penny, and you got a cup of coffee. And the man sitting across from you might have been one of the greatest philosophers of the age, or a powerful merchant, or a scientist, or a poet. For those who couldn't attend university, these coffee houses became places of learning. For those without books, they became libraries, a place where ideas moved freely and everyone stood on equal ground. But in 1674, something interesting happened. The women of London published a petition. It became known in history as the Women's Petition Against Coffee. What were they complaining about? Their husbands never stayed home. They spent all their time in coffee houses. They barely came home at all. They left in the morning and returned late at night. And what were they doing in between? Spending time in coffee houses? The men quickly responded with a counter-petition. No, they said. Coffee makes us smarter, more focused, more productive. And besides, you benefit from that too. So even in 1674, people were arguing about coffee. writing petitions, publishing official documents. I think that says a lot. Coffee had become more than just a drink. It had woven itself into the fabric of society. It was now part of a way of life. Now let me tell you about something very few people know. 1773. Boston Harbor, close to midnight. In the darkness, 3 ships sat quietly at anchor. Around 150 men, their faces painted to resemble Native American tribes, walked toward the ships. They didn't want anyone to know who they really were. Silently, they climbed aboard. They opened the crates and threw everything inside into the sea. Tea. Tons of tea. This event became known as the Boston Tea Party. But before that night, America's story was very different. Up until the 1770s, Americans were actually passionate tea drinkers. It was part of British culture. They started their mornings with tea. They served tea to their guests. Tea wasn't just an ordinary drink to them. It was part of their identity. But Britain made a mistake. It imposed heavy taxes on tea in America. Without asking, without discussion, Americans saw it as an insult. The tension grew, the anger grew, and eventually it exploded that night in Boston Harbor. The crates were thrown into the sea. Some accounts say the water turned dark with the color of tea. The crowd gathered along the shore watched it all unfold. And in that moment, everything changed. Because the next day, people realized something. Drinking tea no longer meant what it used to. If you drink tea, you're siding with the British. No one wanted to be seen that way. Some families even carried their tea chests into the streets and burned them in public ceremonies. So what did people drink instead? Coffee. Overnight, millions of people changed their preference. Coffee was no longer just a drink. It had become a symbol of the American Revolution, the scent of freedom, independence, and rebellion. Drinking coffee was patriotic. Drinking coffee was taking a stand. And today, America is one of the largest coffee consumers in the world. Every morning, millions of Americans start their day with coffee. They may never realize it, but at the root of that cup are tea chests dumped into a harbor. Sometimes the biggest decisions in history are born out of anger. And sometimes a nation's morning routine is shaped by a decision made in the middle of the night. The world wanted more coffee now. Demand had become unstoppable. Yemen and India were no longer enough. New lands were needed. And that's when all eyes turned toward Brazil. Now imagine this. A country that hasn't quite found its identity yet, still young, still taking shape. And then it discovers a plant. That plant grows so well, becomes so productive, that before long, the entire country begins revolving around it. Brazil's climate, soil, and sunshine seemed as if they had been made specifically for coffee. Farmers dedicated their land to coffee. Forests were cleared and replaced with coffee trees. Railroads were built for the sole purpose of transporting coffee to the ports. Ports expanded, cities grew around the coffee trade. So much so that by the late 1800s, 70% of Brazil's export income came from coffee alone. Think about that for a moment. 70%. The future of an entire country was tied to a single plant. What oil means to oil-producing nations today, coffee meant the same thing to Brazil back then. And that dependence came with a price. Whenever coffee prices fell, Brazil's economy shook. When coffee prices rose, the entire country prospered. The fate of one plant had become intertwined with the fate of millions of people. Ships crossed oceans, carrying those small brown beans to every corner of the world, to Europe, to America, to Asia, everywhere. Once, it had been an unknown fruit growing in the mountains of Ethiopia. Now it was shaping the destiny of a nation. And as those beans traveled from one place to another, they carried many other things with them. Culture, habits, rituals of gathering, humanity's need to come together. But now I have to ask something. How did that large brown bean end up fitting into that small white cup? Italy. The late 1800s. Coffee had already spread across the world, but it still had a problem. It took too long to brew. In a crowded cafe, making coffee for dozens of customers, one by one, took time. Far too much time. Customers waiting in line grew impatient, and Italians couldn't accept that. In 1884, a man from Turin named Angelo Moriondo received a patent for a steam-powered coffee machine. The idea was simple but revolutionary. High-pressure steam pushed water through coffee at incredible speed, not in minutes, but in seconds. Over the following years, the machine was improved, refined, perfected, and what emerged from that process was espresso. The word espresso carries two meanings in Italian. One is fast, the other is made especially for you. Both are true. Espresso wasn't just a drink, it was a ritual, standing at the bar and drinking it in a single sip. Fast, intense, complete. The Italians turned it into an art form, and today, that latte, that cappuccino, that Americano, that flat white you order, all of them trace their roots back to that steam-powered machine from 1884. One man said, "This is too slow," and without realizing it, he changed coffee culture forever. Morning coffee, coffee on a work break, coffee with friends, coffee alone. Most of the time, we never think about the history behind the ordinary things in our lives. We pick up the cup, we take a sip, and move on, as if it has always been this way, as if it has always existed. But behind that cup lies hundreds of years of history. There is a curious shepherd in the mountains of Ethiopia. There are the heavily guarded ports of Yemen. There is that moment when Baba Budan held his breath aboard a ship. There are Europeans drinking morning beer and the black liquid that changed their lives forever. There are the dark streets of Istanbul where Murad IV wandered at night. There are London's penny universities. There are those tea chests dumped into Boston Harbor. There is the destiny Brazil tied to coffee. And there is Angelo Moriondo's steam-powered machine. There were bands. There was fear. There was curiosity. There was anger. There was determination. There was courage. And perhaps the most surprising thing about the story of coffee is this. It was never really just about coffee. It was about people. It always was. It was about ideas. It was about two people sitting around a table and sharing something with one another. Think about it. Everywhere in the world, in every culture, in every language, when people want to meet, what do they say? Want to grab a coffee? Strangers say it. Old friends say it. Business meetings begin with it. Reconciliations happen over it. Love stories begin with it. It's as if coffee became the gentlest way for one person to say, "I want to spend time with you." We're even talking about a drink that, in some countries, is said to be remembered for 40 years. Without anyone really noticing, coffee gradually grew into that role over the centuries. We are curious. We want to learn. We want to share. We want to come together. That is the very thing that makes us human. And more often than not, we do it around a cup of coffee. 1,000 years ago, we were the same. And we are still the same today. That drink that was once banned. That drink rulers feared. That bean smugglers risked their lives to carry. That black liquid religious leaders opposed. Today, billions of people wake up to it every morning. They open their eyes, and the first thing they do is walk toward it. The things that change history are not always great wars. Sometimes what changes the course of history is an idea, a conversation, a curiosity, or a few red berries eaten by some goats. And that's how the story of coffee began, and it is still being written. See you in the next video.